Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Sutar. I'm one of the senior investment managers here at Sharewise, and we're here this morning with Paul Rennie. Now, Paul is the founder and managing director of Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals. Paul's been kind enough to dedicate his time and expertise to giving us a presentation, a bit of an update from Paradigm this morning. So he's going to give us our presentation, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A on the floor. Now, I've got a couple of questions that will start us off. But if any participants have further questions they'd like to ask, please submit them through the Q&A function. Now, Paul, thanks again for your time, and the presentation's all yours, mate.
Thanks very much, Ryan. I'll just share my screen and get started. Share screen. Sorry, Ryan, I just have to go back to the start of the presentation.
No, you're all right. We can see it. Looks good.
Okay, so can see that okay?
Sure can. Thank you.
Very good. Ryan, thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks for everyone who's been kind enough to join online. This presentation is about Paradigm Biopharma. It gives an update on where we've been with our clinical development program thus far, and also bring us up to date with where we are with the US FDA. Our standard disclaimer applies, obviously, and we need to consider those forward-looking statements and market estimates. Now, in terms of background, Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals, or Paradigm, we are working with a drug called pentosan polysulfate sodium for subcutaneous use. So it's administered very similarly to Ozempic, which a lot of people have seen advertised, which is a small needle placed against the abdomen, and you wait a few seconds for the drug to be administered. Very straightforward, simple procedure, doesn't really create any significant pain for the patient, but that's the administration of the drug. It's a non-opioid based drug, and we do have extensive clinical evidence around the use of the drug in the field of treating the symptoms of osteoarthritis. So our lead program is xylitol, or PPS, for the treatment of osteoarthritis. And we do know that this is a blockbuster opportunity. There are many people within the community who have early stage, mid stage, or late stage osteoarthritis. It affects around between 10 to 16% of the general population. So it's a very common debilitating disease. And in terms of osteoarthritis, it's very important to understand osteoarthritis is not something that just happens because we get old and it's wear and tear and problems with our joints over many years. That can be a risk factor, obviously. But the thing to understand is that it is a progressive, chronic, degenerative disease. There are now, it's well known, there are biochemical processes at play that are leading to the breakdown of all the structures within the joint. And I've got a few radiographs to show that point. We do have fast track designation with the US FDA. We do have opportunity for expedited approval, like the provisional approval in Australia, also a similar program in Canada. We do have a number of phase 2 studies that have been conducted using the same endpoint as what we anticipate to use in our phase 3 trial, which will be change from pain and change in function from baseline at day 56. We have demonstrated in our phase 2 studies that the duration or the analgesic effect of the drug persists for up to 12 months after it's been administered. As I mentioned, we do know that this is a blockbuster potential, and from an intellectual property point of view, we have very tight control around this asset. We have a 25-year exclusivity in terms of our rights to acquire the only FDA-approved version of this drug, which is from Bene Pharmachem in Germany. We also have a number of patents around the use of the drug for treating osteoarthritis and other arthritic conditions. So I just wanted to pause for a little bit and show everyone what a osteoarthritic joint looks like. So on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see a schematic which actually shows a line through the middle of the joint on the left-hand side showing a normal joint structure. We can see the meniscus, we can see the synovial membrane, and the bone and cartilage all looked intact and very normal. On the right-hand side of that line, you'll see very significant changes to the joint structures. So we can see that the meniscus has broken down totally. We'll eventually see ligaments and tendons also being degenerated. We can see that the cartilage is starting to break down, starting to see these areas where the bone is no longer covered. We can see that the synovium is now very thick pannus form, and this becomes a very significant area of production for inflammatory cytokines. So the synovium is actually now producing a large amount of cytokines, and these cytokines drive a lot of the biochemical processes that I mentioned before. Now, on the right-hand side of that schematic, we can see there's 4 radiographs. Top left, this is grade 0 or a normal looking joint. You can see that the two bones here, this is the femur and the tibia, are well separated, and this separation is due to intact and healthy cartilage. Stage 1 of the disease is when this gap or the distance between the bones starts to narrow. So this is a narrowing of the joint space. Now this occurs also in stage 2, not shown here, but the gap is getting less. We see stage 3 of the disease, where we're now seeing that gap is now no longer appearing on the lateral side of this particular joint. This is not the same patient. These are different images, but this is an X-ray showing that the bones are no longer separated and they're starting to touch one another, causing a significant amount of pain. These teal-coloured arrows are pointing to the bony outgrowths that occur in this stage of the disease, which is the osteophytes. So again, you can see this is stage 4. This is now a very serious condition where the bone is definitely touching, causing a lot of pain and joint dysfunction. We see that these red arrows are pointing to changes in the subchondral bone, or the bone under the cartilage. So we're now seeing all of the joint structures of the disease now being adversely affected, and essentially there's very few, if any, therapeutic options for a patient at this point. Their options are probably surgical at this point in time, apart from the introduction of this drug xylosol for the treatment of moderate to severe osteoarthritis. So these two bottom radiographs are really showing radiographs from a person with moderate to severe osteoarthritis, which is our target market. As I mentioned before, blockbuster opportunity. We know that there's around 72 million people with knee osteoarthritis by the year 2020, by 2030, with an increase in life expectancy and a number of other risk factors. We see that number ballooning out to 120 million. This is an interesting statistic on the right-hand side. Around 81% of people with osteoarthritis are largely dissatisfied with their current treatments. The reason for that is that you see across here on the horizontal x-axis, as I mentioned, we start with stage 1, minor osteoarthritis, stage 2, mild osteoarthritis, stage 3, and stage 4. If you look up in this direction, you'll see that the therapeutic options are largely ineffective, as indicated by the red arrow. So as the patient goes on this journey of joint destruction, you'll see that early on in the mild area of osteoarthritis, often non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or the COX-2 inhibitors are very useful in treating the disease, but eventually they run out of efficacy, and in the moderate to severe stage, these drugs are really no longer satisfactory. So once quite well in managing the disease, but as time progresses, they become largely ineffective. The same with some of these other treatments that are used, hyaluronic acid, injectable, platelet-rich plasma, etc. This particular class of drugs, opioids, obviously works well in minor, but as you get into moderate to severe, even opioids are largely ineffective in treating the disease. So that's why people become largely dissatisfied to a large extent with their medication, because the disease has now outpaced the therapeutic capacity of those drugs. Now, the nice thing about this drug is that it has multiple pharmaceutical actions. So it's a very important thing to understand that there are these multiple biochemical pathways that are upregulated and downregulated during this disease, and some of them affect obviously the cartilage. So the new mechanism of action that we have with this drug is that we know pentosan is able to encourage the cartilage cells to produce more cartilage and extracellular matrix such as proteoglycans, collagen, aggrecan, etc. And at the same time, the same drug actually reduces the enzymes that break down cartilage and break down proteoglycans. So it's got a dual activity in relation to cartilage, which encourages the local cells to produce more cartilage, at the same time entering into the cartilage cells and down-regulating the production of proteolytic enzymes that will go on to be released from the cell and then start breaking down cartilage. So this mechanism of action is very important. We also know it's a very broad-acting anti-inflammatory, so it actually works on TNF-alpha, IL-1 beta, IL-6, which are the three major inflammatory cytokines, and pentosan down-regulates all of them, not specifically TNF, not specifically IL-1 beta or IL-6, but across the board, and that's very important in terms of managing this disease. A snapshot here to show a schematic to demonstrate the utility of xylitol versus other products on the market. Most of the other drugs used in the early to mid stage of osteoarthritis, paracetamol, NSAIDs, other analgesics and opioids, are generally taken daily and have a short-term effect of a few hours. Corticosteroids injected into the joint have a longer lasting effect, but they wane off after 2 to 3 months. That would be their maximum level of efficacy. Some people suggest it's days, but literature suggests it's a bit longer. Hyaluronic acid, again, is extended out to about 3 months, but 12 injections, 1 course of xylitol, sees the analgesic effects continuing out without any further administration of the drug out to 12 months. That's very impressive for osteoarthritis sufferers. Now, this is a chart that's going to be in our upcoming peer-reviewed publication. This is showing the results of our phase 2 data versus other drugs on the market. And as a snapshot, all of the drugs that's showing red histograms, so red bars moving to the left, show that these drugs have no efficacy compared to placebo. The ones in yellow do have efficacy versus placebo, but they do not pass the MCID, which is the minimal clinically important difference between baseline and where the patient is now. So you can just see 2 drugs have outperformed the placebo and have got over the MCID, which is a combination of hyaluronic acid and a steroid. So not hyaluronic acid on its own, that's down here, which performs slightly better than placebo. A hyaluronic acid co-administered with a steroid has this effect, whereas pentosan has the single largest effect of all the other drugs on the market. And also, this is another schematic here to show the line, the MCID. Most of the other drugs showing they're no longer efficacious against placebo. Steroid outperforms placebo, but all these other drugs largely pale into significance when compared to pentosan. And now Paradigm has done a large amount of clinical studies. We have done a number of phase 2 studies. We've also tested the drug in compassionate use programs around the globe. We've had over 600 subjects here in Australia treated and reported their outcomes via the TGA Special Access Scheme. We also treated 10 subjects in the United States, all who were ex-NFL players having significant osteoarthritis problems, moderate to severe osteoarthritis. And all of this data is very, very consistent from our phase 2 studies to special access results. It shows constantly that we see a significant reduction in the pain from the disease, and we see a significant improvement in the function of the joint. And as I said before, those effects are seen out to 6 or 12 months, depending upon our phase 2 study. So this is one phase 2 study, Paradigm 005. This is looking at the effects of xylitol on knee osteoarthritis, but all subjects had a bone marrow lesion. We did stratify this into 2 pre-described cohorts, but we blended all the data together in one chart for this presentation. The yellow-orange line is the PPS, and the grey line is the placebo. So going down from baseline is an improving outcome. In the case of function, so this is function, Coues function, we see from baseline going up or increasing is a benefit over placebo, and we see the results going out to 6 months. Interestingly, during this phase 2 study, we also investigated whether or not the drug might have some activity in being able to modify or slow the disease. One of the hallmarks of cartilage degeneration are these subchondral bone lesions. Same patient here, this is an MRI this time. So we're looking at an MRI and we can see this subchondral lesion. So this is under the cartilage, appearing on the medial side of this particular knee. For those who've got a keen eye will see that the joint is also starting to shift in that medial direction. So there's a change in the bone shape. And this is largely caused because of this significant bone marrow lesion here. Now, only a few weeks after the administration of the drug, we saw a significant change in that lesion, in its size, in its intensity and volume. And this is a very good outcome for this patient because these lesions are generally indicative of where the cartilage will break down most rapidly. Now, we also took biological samples from these subjects. So that was serum, urine, and we looked at these proteolytic enzymes. These enzymes such as Adams TS4, Adams TS5, MMPs, these are enzymes that are designed specifically to break down cartilage. And you can see in the placebo group, Adams TS5 is going up by 10% within a few weeks after the examination after the administration of placebo. However, contrasting to that, a few weeks after the administration of xylitol, we can actually see the Adams TS levels going down by 5%. So that's a very, very good indicator, indicating that the enzymes that break down cartilage are lowered in the PPS group versus placebo. Now, CTX2 is a breakdown fragment of cartilage. It's detected in the urine. So we took urine samples from these patients. CTX2 is a peptide from type 2 collagen. So type 2 collagen is being broken down by these enzymes, and this fragment is released into the synovial fluid and then cleared through the lymphatic system and detected in the urine. You can see that in the CTX2 in the placebo goes up to about 17%. However, the CTX2 levels in the PPS group go down by 25%. Very, very important. CTX2 is a very important marker of the progression of osteoarthritis. So we were very delighted to see this result, and also this result, which COMP is a connector molecule of type 2 collagen. As collagen breaks down, COMP is released into the serum, and you can see in placebo it's going up a few percent, but down 15% in the PPS group. We undertook a second phase 2 study. This is after this type of exploratory endpoints where we saw potential for disease modification. We wanted to do a second study for a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons was we wanted to look at whether or not we could see changes in the actual joint structures or improvements in the joint structures at a 6-month time point. So this is the pain and function scores that we got from, this is now the second phase 2 study, Paradigm 008. From baseline going down in red is the PPS, and we saw it significant at day 56. So cessation of the drug or the last injection occurs at day 39. 2 weeks later, we see that peak effect goes down and almost the same effect, almost as the same as the peak effect at day 365. So a very encouraging outcome. And then we saw in the, this is now WOMAC function and WOMAC pain. In WOMAC function, we see decreasing down at day 56 and extending out to day 365. And we also see the placebo starting to head back towards baseline at 12 months. So from a clinical perspective, yes, we achieved the primary endpoint of pain and joint dysfunction, which is the same as our phase 3 study. But we also saw some very interesting structural changes. Now, I'm only looking at one structure here. I'm not going to go through all of the structures. We don't have time to go through the synovitis or the bone marrow lesions and other joint structures, but we just look at the cartilage, which is really the hallmark of osteoarthritis. And here what we're looking at is an MRI at 6 months. So at baseline, before the drug is injected or the placebo is administered, we do an MRI and then we compare it to an MRI at 6 months. So what we're looking at here is an increase or decrease from baseline. So in the case of this placebo in this region of the joint, we can actually see that after 6 months in this region of the joint, same patient, and these are the pooled data, shows that collectively there's a 10% reduction in the actual cartilage thickness. Now, this is measured in microns. So this is the actual thickness of cartilage. And you would expect that 10 to 15 microns of cartilage loss in a patient with moderate to severe osteoarthritis correlates exactly with the trajectory of the disease. So losing somewhere between 20 to 30 microns of cartilage every 12 months, 10 to 15 microns of cartilage loss at 6 months is exactly what the literature suggests for this compartment of the joint. Now, as we see in the PPS group, and strikingly, instead of going down in terms of cartilage loss, we actually see that that has increased by 55 microns in cartilage thickness. Actual cartilage thickness is going up in the PPS group, and that occurs in every region of the joint. We see PPS above baseline. It was neutral at this particular area, which is the lateral tibial region. It was neutral, no increase or decrease. And then overall, we see that the loss of cartilage is around 100 microns across the entire joint for placebo. And we see that in the PPS group, an increase of about 170 microns in cartilage thickness, which is, again, replacing a lot of the cartilage that's lost through this disease at a 6-month time point. So this was really groundbreaking for us, and we feel that these data are very, very compelling. We do recognise it's a relatively small study of only 61 subjects, so we have to temper our enthusiasm a bit with the small study size. But having said that, it's very encouraging to see all sections of the joint remaining the same or increasing in cartilage thickness. Now, this is cartilage volume, a different measurement across the entire region of that area of the joint, again showing in the blue the PPS group at all times and at all sections of the joint. The cartilage volume is increasing, corresponding with a loss in cartilage for all placebo patients. Now, we're looking at our phase 3 trial design. We're looking at a size of around about 400 subjects, roughly randomized 1-to-1, so roughly 200 in the PPS group and 200 in placebo. The placebo will be saline. We see the study design, first injection at baseline. We'll have the last injection at day 39, which is consistent with our phase 2 studies. Day 56, primary endpoint, following these subjects out for 12 months. We'll be doing an MRI at baseline, MRI at 6 months, and an MRI at baseline. We'll also be doing X-rays at baseline and X-rays at day 365. So we're looking to compile enough information to be able to put onto our label that this drug treats the pain and joint dysfunction of osteoarthritis and is durable out to 12 months and also has evidence of disease modification. So in summary, the opportunity for investors is that we have extensive clinical and real-world evidence of the use of xylitol in treating patients with osteoarthritis. The program is fast-tracked by the US FDA. The phase 3 program is fast-tracked. This was historically our phase 3 program. Stage 1 was completed, randomizing over 600 subjects across 120 sites globally. Now, I just stress that point. We have recruited 600 subjects previously across 120 sites, and that was in stage 1, which was our dose finding part of the phase 3 program. And as I mentioned before, we do have strong intellectual property and patent protection around the asset. We do have a fully validated FDA-approved manufacturing facility in Germany via our partnership with Bene Pharmachem, and we do have a strategy to partner our clinical asset with a pharma company in the United States. Some of the upcoming catalysts, I know that we'll be talking about this more. Phase 3 program, the revised phase 3 program, which is 400 subjects. We have put our documents to the US FDA back in April, and we're now waiting on a response from the FDA for their clearance to move forward with the phase 3 design, as I've outlined here. We're also waiting on the TGA for provisional approval to move to the second stage of that application. We are continuing to work on partnering the asset with partners in regional locations. We've mentioned before China, South America, United States. Now, we are well advanced in some of these discussions, but all of the discussions are really waiting on the first point to be resolved, which is the phase 3 clearance by the US FDA. And I've mentioned all of those points. As I mentioned, I showed 2 charts from an upcoming manuscript, which will be comparing Paradigm's phase 2 clinical data to other available medications on the market. And that should be a very exciting opportunity. And I think, Ryan, now I can hand back to you for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very detailed presentation, Paul. I found it very thorough and very interesting. Now we'll just open up to a couple of questions. I've got a couple here from myself and then a couple from participants. So if anybody else would like to submit them, feel free to do so and I'll ask them subsequently. Now, Paul, just to open things up, when do you expect to receive the FDA's feedback from the submitted stage 3 trial?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So just for everyone's benefit, the context is we're waiting for the FDA to give us clearance to move forward with the phase 3 program. Now, we had a meeting with the FDA back in January. It was January 10th, 2024. We explained to the FDA all of the data that we had generated thus far, what our results were in terms of the dose ranging study, the results of our phase 2 study, et cetera. The FDA said that they wanted us to put that into a full and final response. So we put all that data together, large amount of data, and we put all of that to the FDA on the 18th of April. And since that time, we've been waiting for the FDA to ask us any questions or to be able to give us clearance to move forward with that phase 3 protocol design that's on the screen at the moment. So this is what we presented to the FDA. Based on our phase 2 data, our dose ranging studies, etc., we believe this is going to be the lowest effective dose to give us a high probability of success in a phase 3 trial.
Okay, so on the topic of this then, do you envisage any particular questions or potential delays from regard to the FDA before they progress to clearance?
We know that the FDA is reviewing our package. They have asked us a few procedural questions to date. They've asked us for links to various studies, clarifying the data in a few areas. So I think they will always ask some questions, but we are well and truly prepared to answer those questions quickly and thoroughly should they come. we don't know really how much more questions they should have, because we believe that the data as submitted is very comprehensive and it's very conclusive in terms of our findings. So we would hope that the FDA would give us clearance within weeks of from now, basically. We're hoping that they will be able to respond and give us that clearance that we need.
Well, appreciate that update, Paul. Now, just on that topic again, could you just talk us through the proposed line of participants in the next stage of the phase 3 program in comparison to the other previous stages?
Sorry, Ryan, what was the question?
Can you talk us through the proposed lowering of participants in the next stage in comparison to the previous stages?
Okay, yes, thanks, Ryan. So in our earlier stage, we have a biostatistician that basically determines from all of the data the drug effect size. And so let me call that drug effect size X. Then we had a second phase 2 study where the drug effect size was higher, and then we combine the two and then average it out, and we come with a median drug effect size. And when we apply that drug effect size to the current data, it says that we should be able to get statistical significance with around about 98% probability of success with 400 subjects. So we don't need to do as many subjects given the drug effect size when it's combined from 2 phase 2 studies.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. And just to pivot now to a different topic, is the company actively looking to add further non-executive members to the board?
Yes, we'll always be looking to make sure that the board has the adequate skill sets to move the company forward. We currently have two executives and 2 non-executives on the board. We are looking, but realistically, our priority here is to try and get the company working with the FDA to get the clearance so that we can move forward and get on with this clinical trial program. So the answer is yes. We will always be looking for new members to the board, but we had a addition recently, Mr. Matthew Fry. Matt has been outstanding in his contribution to the board thus date. He has a very extensive commercial background. He has been very successful in the healthcare industry, and he's already brought a wealth of experience and knowledge and excitement to the board about commercial deals for Xylosol.
All right, well, very exciting stuff. Now, just to shift back to the company and what's going on currently, should the FDA give the green light in the near future, what realistically can investors look forward to in the back half of this year?
Okay, so we would hope that there'd be a number of updates in terms of progress with our phase 3 program. We would hope that we'd be able to announce the clearance, we'd be able to announce the commencement of the trial, recruitment of first patient and milestones as we go through this study, and also as indicated on this slide, we do anticipate having an interim analysis, so progress to that particular point. We'll also be having, hopefully, finalisation of our commercialisation discussions. At the moment, obviously, commercial companies are waiting for the clearance before they make their final decisions. We would hope that with that clearance, we would be making some announcements in relation to commercial transactions. I think this is really the last major hurdle that the company has in terms of moving it forward through to revenues. After we get clearance through the FDA, our biggest risk, if you like, will be execution risk. And that's why I paused and stressed during one of the slides that we have already shown that we can recruit and treat patients globally up to 120 sites. And in the dose ranging study, we recruited over 600 subjects. So this study requiring 400 subjects, we feel that we have the expertise inside the company. And we also have a highly skilled and highly motivated number of employees who will be able to execute on that study as outlined on the screen here, 400 subjects.
Okay. Now, thank you for answering those questions. Really appreciate that one. We're just going to pivot now to some participant questions. The first one I have here is, do you have a rough estimate of the total funds you will need to finish part 3 of the osteoarthritis trial?
Yes, we think that the phase 3 osteoarthritis trial, as outlined here, probably would, depending upon a number of different factors, and of course I have to add the caveats that what happens if the FDA come back and want some additional monitoring or screening procedures that we haven't budgeted for at this stage. That's going to add to the cost. So based on our best estimate thus far, we would be looking at somewhere between $50 and $60 million to execute on this particular phase 3 trial.
Okay. And on that basis then, does the company currently have that cash at hand, or is there a requirement for a deal or a potential cash raise in order to find that executable funding?
Certainly, we don't have the cash on hand. Our next 4C will show that we have around about 20 million Australian dollars on hand, so we will have a funding gap. We are hoping to address that funding gap in a number of different ways, but most importantly, once we get clearance through the FDA, we would hope a commercial transaction would go a large way to adding to our current cash to give us the necessary cash to finish off this phase 3 trial. We have said for some time that our preference would be to get the cash by way of non-dilutive funding, not requiring us to go back to the market at this stage. But there's a number of different things to play out before we get to that point. But our preference is to fund it through commercial transaction.
Of course. Now, just a quick clarification: is the 50 to 60 in AUD or is it US dollar?
US dollars.
US dollars. Okay. Thank you for that one. Now, just another question here. Is the special access scheme still enabled, and is stock of IPPS still available for patients on SAS?
The special access program is still ongoing. We have changed slightly in that we were making the drug available free of charge for patients as long as they were willing to give a assessment of their outcome with the drug to the doctor and do a follow-up study. We have, with the TGA, agreed that we can recover our costs associated with shipping and supplying the drug. So there is a charge now for the special access scheme. Stock is currently being monitored so that we make sure that we have sufficient stock for our clinical program ahead of the special access program. We do have more stock arriving very soon, which will mean that we will have no issue with availability of stock, but it is being meted out specifically so that we do have enough material for our phase 3 trial. But answering your question, yes, special access is still ongoing. I just highlight that there is a change that it is now a fee-based service, which is a cost recovery from our perspective. And thirdly, we are currently limited stock because we're preserving enough stock for our phase 3 program, but we will be having more stock available in the near future.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Paul. Now, what is the revised estimate for the lodging of an NDA with the FDA?
Well, that comes after the phase 3 trial, obviously. Okay. So as you can see, if we start day one, this is just for one subject, they go out for a period of 404 days. So depending upon the recruitment rate, that will then also determine the finishing date. So NDA will occur probably, we estimate, somewhere in the region of 2026, maybe early 2027, but that's up for discussion with the FDA as we work through a number of issues which we have in front of them at the moment, which is the protocol and also retreatment and a number of other factors which might require some extension to this timeline. But we're not that far away from generating our first income.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you for that one. Now, just moving on here. Regarding the results, for the preliminary drug, if the results are as good as you suggest, why haven't we already had a deal? It is shown that the best time to do a deal is after phase 2.
Okay, so that's a very good question. And look, we do have interested parties that are starting to prepare term sheets. But look, the reality is, if you're an investor or you're going to invest a lot of money in a program, you're going to want to know that it's got clearance through the US FDA.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to invest in a program that is going to have unspecified delays. So we are waiting for the clearance, as is our commercial partner, waiting for the clearance to be able to move forward and conclude a deal. That's why we do believe that the funds available from that deal will be able to fund the phase 3 program. Now, sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
No, you're right, Paul.
So we do have commercial interest, and I have to say, as a result of the conferences that we've attended this year, we have commercial interest in South America, which has been ongoing for some time. But those investors also want to know that we've got clearance through the US FDA, same in China, same in the United States. So we have 3 regions that we're currently looking to do a deal on. But I think those partners are naturally going to wait until clearance through the US FDA before they put pen to paper.
Of course, and thank you for that further clarification. Now, in the event down the track that TGA provisional approval is received, what sort of rough royalty could we expect on these provisional sales?
Well, first of all, we've made a submission to see if we qualify, and most of the applications that have gone through the provisional approval have been in the area of cancer treatments. So we are hopeful that the TGA see osteoarthritis as a important disease with debilitating effects, and they grant us the rights to submit a full dossier. If we submit a full dossier, that will take a minimum of 12 months. And then if we get provisional approval, it means provisional approval will occur July, August, sometime 2025. Now, once we have that approval, we would need to do a sales and distribution agreement with a local company, or could be a local company of a major pharma company that wants to do the distribution in Australia. Then that's up to us to negotiate a distribution agreement that gives us a royalty of probably anywhere between 10 and 20%. So then you say, okay, 20% on sales, which we estimate that there are close to 3 million people in Australia with osteoarthritis. Discount that back a bit to those with moderate to severe osteoarthritis. Let's say 2 million people at a cost of around $2,500. You can work out the top line sales will be hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and then 20% of that. So that sort of gives the quantum, but those figures can't be determined until we finalise that supply agreement with the local distributor.
Of course. And just to finish things off for the day, I've got a participant that asks, is there any way for an OA patient to access the treatment now?
Sorry, Ryan, what was the question?
Is there any way for an OA patient to access the treatment now?
Yes, that would be through the special access scheme, and that person can contact the company, or we will then put that person in contact with a doctor who might be familiar with the special access scheme, have to have a consultation and review the patient's suitability, eligibility for use of the drug, etc., etc. And then if suitable, the doctor fills out the paperwork, sends it to Canberra. Canberra notifies us, and we supply the drug. But there has been a few supply issues of recent times, which is probably why the questions came up. We were restricting the supply of special access product out to doctors because we wanted to make sure that we've got enough material for their phase 3 program. We don't want to be recruiting and not have enough material for the phase 3 program, obviously.
Of course, of course. We've just got one more that has come through. When will the peer review paper be published?
Well, again, that's not up to us. We've filed the manuscript with the journal. So we've filed 2 manuscripts, one on Para 005, one on Para 008, which is the 2 phase 2 studies. They have been submitted to the journal Osteoarthritis and Cartilage. Now that is up to the editor and the peer review team to make their decision, ask us any questions, clarify the data, rewrite sections of the manuscript. And once that's done, we will then obviously see that in publication, hopefully sometime this year. But sometimes these publications can take, longer than 6 months to actually appear in the publication. So we'll just have to wait and see. But they have been submitted. So we've done our piece of work to necessarily write them up. Where we've done an internal review, we've double checked all of the data. We've submitted it off to the journal. Now we wait for the journal to let us know if it's successful.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you for that one. Well, realistically, that about wraps everything else for us, Paul. So thank you very much for your time and your expertise. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to leave the participants with?
No, Ryan, I just wanted to say thank you to you and Share Cafe for the opportunity to present. Obviously, all of the people who are attending online, thank you for attending. And as always, if any of the attendees have any questions, I think yes, here we have emails for both Simon and myself that investors can reach out and ask any further questions they might have. We're always very happy to try and address them, but I'm sorry I can't give a specific date on the clearance because that's not up to us, that's up to the FDA. But as soon as we get the clearance, obviously we'll notify the market, and we hope that will be a matter of weeks, not months.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Thanks, Ryan.